heads up, and in the middle, I'll do some Q&A too, so just to let you know. A little background on myself. I studied computer science in college, and then I went to Silicon Valley to work as a programmer, and I've been in Silicon Valley for 10 years now. And the past couple of years, I was looking for something to do in the Bitcoin blockchain space. And one of the problems that I wanted to solve, which I started thinking about in around 2013, is how to create Bitcoin-like blockchains without the mining aspect, without the electricity expenditure. Somehow I found a solution while I was rummaging through some old papers, and that's what Tendermint is now. We've been working on it for 2.5 years, and really proud of it. And Cosmos is something that we're building on top of Tendermint, so let's get into it. So before I get into all the crazy stuff, I just want to talk about fault tolerance. So before we had one computer, if it crashes, then it crashes, right? And then came fault-tolerant algorithms like Raft and Paxos. Google, Facebook, these companies use these algorithms to ensure that even if the machine were to crash, the service continues to function. And that's why Gmail and everything works so well. But they don't account for a malicious node or a hacked server that's trying to disrupt the system from within. So for that, you need a proof of work or some kind of other Byzantine fault-tolerant algorithm. What's interesting, so what I mean is, what happens is even if a node were to fail, it would work fine, but it can also be hacked by somebody trying to destroy the system from within and it will still work. It turns out that the history of Byzantine fault-tolerant algorithms goes a long way. So in 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto came up with Bitcoin, but it wasn't the only solution. I mean, it was definitely a very unique solution that uses mining to come to consensus, but there's been several phenomenal papers ever since the 80s and before talking about Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus algorithms. So the first one is about, it was an impossibility result called the FLP impossibility result. Then a few years later, the same person, Lynch, was involved in a solution that circumvents the FLP possibility result. And then in 1999, there was a phenomenal algorithm published by, I believe, MIT called PBFT. So like that family of BFT algorithms doesn't require mining at all. It's based on public private key cryptography and quorum as opposed to mining. So one way to summarize it is proof of work requires energy expenditure, and it takes a long time to confirm a transaction, up to an hour, but as we'll see later, I'll talk about that more later. Whereas in proof of stake, not just any proof of stake, by the way, I'm talking specifically about BFT proof of stake. Not too many people are looking at this today, even today, even though I've been yelling about it for 2.5 years. It's based on public key cryptography. The nice benefit is, the great benefit is that it's instant. So every block is final, and the system doesn't fork. So it's very fast. So I'm talking about in a global blockchain with, say, 100 validators, you can have blocks being committed every 1 to 3 seconds. And that's how long it would take to have finality on a transaction. A little bit hurt. Is there another mic there? Here's a little quick question, and you guys can ask this to yourselves after this talk. But how many confirmations would you wait for to confirm a $100 million Bitcoin transaction? So the conventional answer is 6 blocks or an hour. But where does that security come from? Can you really just wait for 6 blocks for a $100 million transaction? Well, I would say no, because the reason why it's secure, why Bitcoin is secure, is because every block takes electricity to generate. And so, in other words, in proof of work, attacks, they incur costs before the attack. That's how it's secure. But if you look at the number, it's only $7,500 a block, so 6 confirmations is just 6 times that. So you can imagine that if somebody were motivated enough and could profit by double spending that 100 million on transaction, it may be possible. Whereas proof of stake, BFT proof of stake, the Byzantine fault-tolerant algorithm guarantees that it provides similar guarantees as proof of work. So you still need a large coalition to try to attack the system. Naming more than 1/3 to attack it for an attack to succeed. But once they've attacked it, you can find out who they are. And so it's a collateral-based system, whereas proof of work is not. So just to clarify that, like if you remember the Ethereum ETH and ETC fork, what happened was initially the miners were all for ETH, Ethereum, and then over time, as people were buying ETC coins in order to make it go up in value, to create some buzz around it. Once that started happening, the miners switched over to ETC, just in accordance to what the price differences were. And so these the Ethereum miners were essentially bribed to move on to another hard fork, and that's because they really had nothing to lose. Right? But in proof of stake, all the validators have the pseudonymous identity, so if they were to do such a thing where they switch over to another fork and they're not supposed to, then you can figure out who they are. So that's why proof of stake systems can have potentially much more security because it's based on collateral. Quickly, some people have argued that proof of stake is impossible because of the nothing at stake problem. And I would say that that's been true, but it's not really if you use the right algorithm. First, what you do is you split it into 2 problems, the short-range attack problem and the long-range attack problem. The short-range attack, you solve it with bonding and unbonding. So before you can take your staking tokens out and sell it or give it to someone, before you can transfer it, you have to wait for a period of time, perhaps a month or so. And that allows you to, once you figure out who the attackers are, you can then punish them by slashing their collateral. But you still need proper BFT algorithms, otherwise it's not secure. So some people who think that they've solved the nothing at stake problem will say, hey, we solved it through bonding, whatever. But if you don't have the right algorithm, that doesn't give you some guarantees. All right, so a little bit about Tendermint. What Tendermint does is it only solves a few things. It solves the peer-to-peer networking problem, so it makes sure that the blockchain continues to function for as long as the nodes are even weakly connected, because it's based on a gossip protocol. And what that means is Tendermint blockchains don't rely on the IP infrastructure. It doesn't rely on certificate authorities or anything, just like Bitcoin. So Tendermint also handles consensus because we have our own implementation of a very good BFT algorithm that we've been developing. It's very similar to PBFT. And it solves the mempool or transaction broadcasting problem as well. But the thing it doesn't do is it doesn't know what transactions are. So for that, you have to plug in a state machine and tell Tendermint what those transactions are, and which transactions are valid, etc. So what you can do is you can plug in your own state machine of choice. So it could be the Ethereum virtual machine, or it could be Zcash, it could be Monero, whatever you want. Or maybe it's your own proprietary voting application, whatever. You can write it in any language because the socket protocol that Tendermint uses to communicate with the state machine is it's a network protocol. Oh, by the way, we just last week finished a small demo that we're going to continue to build into a production application called TNSP Ethereum. So this is combining Tendermint with Go Ethereum. So now you can run Go Ethereum and have the same RPC endpoints but not rely on mining, but using Tendermint with the validator system. Picture here, like the blue boxes are Tendermint nodes. So let's just say Tendermint. The red application could be like Go Ethereum or some other state machine. And the Tendermint programs are all connected to each other and communicating through gossip. But the application, the state machine, is not, it doesn't have to be exposed to the internet. The pair of the Tendermint core and the app, those two programs, is what constitutes a blockchain node in Tendermint land. All right, so this stuff has been in development since 2014, and it's gone through several iterations and improvements. We changed the license to the Apache 2.0, which means it's compatible with virtually any license out there. You're free to use it, it's completely free. And we'll have a production version coming very soon, so around January next year. Any questions on Tendermint? Yes.
You said the Tendermint also contains a protocol. It uses the gossip protocol to communicate. What are the differences with the DevP2P protocol of Ethereum?
Oh yeah, so how is the Tendermint gossip protocol different than ETH-P2P? It's similar, it's more stripped down than ETH-P2P. So ETH-P2P allows for things like loading services. We don't do that. It's a simpler thing. It started with fairness in mind. So in our P2P library, you can create different channels and give them different priorities. And that's really necessary if you want to have a robust system in the face of all kinds of DOS attacks. Other than that,
how about the encryption? Because DevP2P is encrypted by default.
Yes, yeah, ours too. We use a Diffie Hellman key exchange. Yeah, so all the communication is encrypted. I mean, we'd love to use anything that's good so we can even plug in something else, but I think what we have is very nice because it's so simple. Any other questions about Tendermint?
In one of your slides, it says in a proof of work system, you need 50% of the network to attack.
Yeah.
In the BFT, if you use BFT proof of stake, you need a third of the network.
Yes.
How do you come up with that number?
Okay, sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So, the Satoshi's white paper claims that Bitcoin can tolerate up to 49% Byzantine actors, but it's not really true if you consider things like selfish mining. So there's that paper by Jae, Yao, and Quincer talking about selfish mining and how actually the tolerance level, the threshold, is only like 1/4 or something. But I just put 1/2 up there because that's what everybody understands and knows. The 1/3 comes from the algorithm, the BFT algorithm. The reason why it's 1/3 is because we're trying to create a mostly asynchronous consensus protocol. So we're trying to create something very fast. And because the internet is so imperfect and sometimes network disruptions happen, if we try to rely on synchrony, accurate clocks and reliable networks, if we were to do that, then we can tolerate up to 1/2. That's what the theory says. But the problem is it would necessarily be a slow system. If you want a very fast asynchronous consensus, meaning progressing to the next block as soon as we get enough signatures, right? That's what makes it fast, then we can only tolerate 1/3 or more. The reason why, I'm going to try to explain it, I may fail. Think about it like this. If you only see, say, 1/2 of the votes, like 51% of the votes, and you were to progress to the next block, what could happen is the network could partition into 2 partitions. For example, one in the United States and one in Europe. And with only a small amount of malicious actors who have access to both, but are lying, saying, here's what I mean. So in the United States, you might have 49% of honest actors and 2%, say, of malicious actors who are lying and saying, I don't see Europe, but let's continue on because we're 51%. And in Europe, you might also have another 49% that are honest, but the same 2% that are lying to Europe and saying, I don't see the United States, but we're 51%, so let's go on. And this creates a divergent fork, and that's what we want to prevent, because that's what allows for double spin attacks. And so in my example, there was a double spin attack even though only 2% were lying, which means that the system is only able to tolerate up to a very small number of Byzantine actors. If you want that number to be big, then it can go up to 1/3. So that's why. Any other questions about Tendermint? Okay. So now I want to show you a video because we've been building Tendermint, but the reason why is because we want to create a real proof-of-stake blockchain. And we're calling the thing that we're creating, we're calling it Cosmos. And I want to show you the video because it's short and it kind of explains how it works. Let's see if it works. Oh, there doesn't seem to be any audio.
Today's blockchains have a lot of problems. They're slow, they don't scale well, and they exist in silos.
Sorry.
If you want to trade one currency for another, you have to go through an exchange, and exchanges are vulnerable to attacks. Cosmos was built to solve these problems. Cosmos is a network of blockchains organized into hubs and zones. Zones plug into a central hub, and each zone maintains its own governance. The Cosmos hub will be the first multi-asset hub, but eventually there will be many hubs. With Cosmos, you can securely transfer tokens from one blockchain to another. You can also scale your network easily, adding as many zones as you like to a hub. Cosmos is powered by Tendermint, a blockchain middleware designed for security and speed. Tendermint removes the complexity of blockchain development. It lets you write blockchain smart contracts in any language, and it uses a secure Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus algorithm. Tendermint provides a highly efficient and provably secure proof-of-stake solution. Cosmos will launch the Cosmos Hub and Exchange with a native staking token called Atom soon. To learn more about Cosmos, the new internet of blockchains, visit our website at cosmos.network.
All right, so when we put that video out there, some people at BlockNet were complaining that they had come up with the phrase Internet of Blockchains first, so I decided to change it to Network of Blockchains, so pretend like it says Network of Blockchains. All right, so we call blockchains in Cosmos zones because we believe that every blockchain, every public blockchain, should have its own governance system, its own political system and set of rules. It's its own economic zone. So, what to do in the case of hacks and theft, like the DAO hack. Every blockchain should determine that for themselves. What we've done is we've developed a method. Sorry, please go.
As long as blockchains exist, I think 8 years now, 9, there has never have been one blockchain being hacked.
Well, arguably, the DAO was a hack of the application, but I'm also referring to those.
But not the blockchain itself. I mean, that's secure, safe, due to the Byzantine general problem.
There certainly have been blockchains that have been hacked and had to hard fork because they were all kinds of issues with their bugs, or because there was massive theft, because there was a bug or a vulnerability in the client software. People have hard forks, various altcoins. And the way that they came to consensus was, it was easier for them because it was a smaller community for these coins that have hard fork. But in the case of Ethereum, we'll go into it later, and I'll show you a slide and we'll talk about Ethereum.
I mean, there was a big hack in, I in Japan or something, but that was caused by exchange companies, making faults. But that's something built up on the blockchain, but not the blockchain itself. So far as I was informed by Andreas.
Well, we'll see. I'll try to find some
Yeah,
counters.
I believe it.
Yeah, but even if it's not the blockchain itself, the same thing applies.
So is Andreas referring to the Bitcoin blockchain in particular?
I don't know, it could be, yes.
Because it's probably a more safe statement to say there. Although I do recall that there were some issues that were very quickly fixed in Bitcoin. There were, in the past, there were some others.
I've heard, yes. Yeah, so what you can do with Tendermint, or any BFT consensus algorithm for that matter, is you can create a way for blockchains to literally talk to each other. Kind of like how computers communicate with each other through TCP/IP. You can do something very similar with blockchains that's not being done today. Well, anyways. So with Bitcoin, Blockstream, that company, produced a paper called the sidechain system. And they have something very similar, but because there's a Bitcoin at the center, it's a bit difficult to implement or comprehend how it works. But with Tendermint, it's much better and much faster. And we call that thing IBC for inter-blockchain communications. Very similar to TCP. What you can do with this is create a scaling solution, for example, for the EVM. So what's going on here is each circle is a blockchain. They have their own validator set, and they're independent of each other, except for the fact that each sidechain is connected to the hub. So none of the sidechains are communicating to each other directly, but they're communicating through the hub. And if I have an account here, the hub doesn't know about that, but I can tell the hub to send, to transfer some of my tokens to this blockchain because of the algorithm, of the protocol. And all the hub knows about is how many tokens are in each sidechain. Doesn't know anything about the logic or the state of these sidechains. So we can scale Ethereum, for example. We can scale other things, but it's also nice for upgrading. So whenever you have a new version of, say, the VM, you can plug it into the hub, and now people can move their tokens whenever they want at their leisure, and it would make upgrades so much less contentious. Of course, we can support all kinds of applications, whether it be like Zcash or perhaps even Bitcoin, although the UTXO system doesn't work too well. Another thing we can do is we can peg to existing blockchains. So you can also think of these as representing pegs, peg blockchains. So in that case, the ETH circle will represent an Ethereum peg blockchain that communicates both to the hub as well as to Ethereum. What I'm really excited about is solving the distributed exchange problem. So in this system, we can have one of the sidechains represent a distributed exchange. It's not a decentralized exchange like what a lot of people are talking about. When people talk about decentralized exchanges, often they're talking about a system where a smart wallet can talk to other wallets and trade securely and then settle on each blockchain using things like atomic cross-chain transactions. But what you can't do in those systems is go offline, because both parties to a trade need to be online to complete that trade. So it creates this situation where it's hard to develop volume or order book depth, which means centralized exchanges still have a huge leg up. But once we have an exchange on a blockchain itself, where the validator set of that blockchain are executing a limit order on your behalf while you're offline, we can start to create really good distributed exchanges. And we also have a solution that is a hybrid solution. So not only is it a blockchain with distributed custody of coins, meaning no single validator can try to steal anything, but we can also support centralized exchanges acting as centralized order matchers. So orders can be very quick on the millisecond or nanosecond level. It's visual on. And we're not trying to create a system where, like, you know, our hub is at the center of the universe. We really want to create a protocol for a network of tokens. So anyone can create their own hub and compete. You know, there's no reason why we can't all work together. It's all about, just like the internet or the World Wide Web, all the websites are interconnected for the most part. That's the kind of work we want to create with tokens. All right, so a little bit about the atoms token. In Cosmos, because it's a proof-of-stake system, we need a way to create some kind of token that represents stake. A lot of proof-of-stake systems try to design the system so that the base currency acts as a staking token. So if you have like the Ethereum proof-of-stake system might work like this, where if you have enough Ether, you can then place it in bonds, post as collateral, become part of the network. But in my view, that conflates the stake versus the medium of exchange. So another way to look at it is Bitcoin maybe has two currencies. One is Bitcoin and the other is the mining equipment and mining infrastructure. And so that's kind of what we're trying to model by having a separate staking token. So if you have the staking token and you don't do anything with it, you don't put it at stake, then you're going to start paying an inflation tax, similar to how like Bitcoin mining gear will depreciate over time as technology gets better. So if you don't want that, then you have to either become a validator or delegate your staking items to your own choice of validators. You're really putting your staking tokens at stake when you validate, when you delegate, so you have to do it carefully. So yeah, in BFT algorithms, the block time, the block time is inversely, the more validators there are in a BFT system, the slower it gets. So today, we can handle a global validator set with 100 validators and have like 3-second block times. Which doesn't sound like much, but if you also add the element of delegation, then many people can participate in choosing the validator set. But also, due to like Nielsen's law, which is like Moore's law for networks, we can actually support an exponentially increasing number of validators every year. In the future, we'll be supporting up to 300 validators within 10 years. That's kind of how we're creating our schedule. But who knows? Maybe we'll be able to even support 10,000 or 100,000 validators all talking to each other. Another nice thing is each validator can set a commission rate. So when I delegate my staking token to another validator, I might have to pay a commission. So the percentage of the transaction fees, as well as the inflationary additives that I've earned, I would have to pay the validator. So it creates this market. I wonder how it's going to evolve. I have no idea. All right, so going back to governance. What happened when ETH and ETC forked was, what they did afterwards was they tried to poll the Ether holders and the miners to decide what to do. But there was no prior social contracts as to how to deal with, how to create a decision. And so they tried to poll the ETH holders, but only 6% answered because ETH holders weren't expected to answer such things. They had no responsibility to participate in these kinds of things. And the miners could be bribed because they didn't really have any collateral and didn't have any identity, so they could just move over to supporting the ETC chain. So the answer to that is we should have a governance mechanism built into the blockchain. So the hub, for example, will have its own governance system. And the Ether holders, the atom holders are responsible for voting.